it's a curiosity I think we're exploring on this show, is like what characterizes this time of life and why can it be so uniquely painful and yet we always remember it with such, I mean, like syrupy, sweet nostalgia, even though it often at the time is like all you wanted was to just get on with it, you know?
And looking at today's world, I mean, you know, with social media, it's like, it must be so confusing. If you're a teenager, it must be so confusing because we are you know, especially middle school, high school, you're already looking at your peers for acceptance and you're looking at them for guidance and you're afraid, like you said, to sort of own your own truth because you feel like you're going to be backed into a corner, you're going to be, you know, cast out, you're going to be, and now you've got this sort of social media thing, which must be so confusing for people because how often it conflicts with how they really feel, and yet they're at war with feeling like they can express how they really feel because they're going to be attacked by the masses or someone saying that this is what's trendy now or this is what's the right thing now. And it's like, I think, you know, I feel like we don't, it's going to get a little sad when I say this, I think, but I get a little sad. I get a little worried, like consumerism and America, you know, capitalizes so much on this particular age group for so many things, you know, because it's such
they're preyed on,
so
basically.
If you're a teenager and you're listening to this, like I would say, like count yourself and give yourself more credit here. Like everyone's after you in some way, like to sell you something, to take over what you want, because you're passionate, you're young enough at that point where you're going like, I feel this, and then tomorrow you might feel differently, and then it's emotions and you're going up and down, you're trying to understand what they are, and then like you've got all these things kind of trying to capitalize on that, and that makes me kind of sad because it's like, I mean, you know, if you think about having kids one day, you want to be able to like steer them the right way. And when they get to that age group, you fear that it's like, oh my God, they're going to have to just, you know, navigate over these hoops that society's throwing at them nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really.
Do you feel? Oh, sorry. Go
Well,
ahead,
I would say that really resonates, Sebastian. I'm really grateful that you shared that perspective. I was just thinking yesterday, I like finally got on TikTok. I haven't had it for all this time, and I was like, you know, scrolling, whatever, and I just felt really sad. Like I was just thinking about all the stimulation. Like I feel like in our society, there's no longer space for stillness. It's like stimulus, 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 and young people themselves are like now the product. Like they sometimes commodify themselves, I think, not knowing that that's what's happening. And, you know, these platforms sell your data to other companies. So like you are the commodity, like you are the product that's being sold. And there's like 12-year-olds on these platforms. Anyway, long rant, but I was feeling really sad yesterday.
From our sponsor.
TikTok.
Yeah. By the way, I don't say this as like a weird like attention to myself, but I did turn 40 like last week, and it's
Happy birthday! Congratulations!
Like, you know, I was actually when you mentioned 9/11, I was like, damn, how old's that?
Yeah. No. 40, and so it's like it's interesting when you're 40, you start to kind of like, you know, you I mean, it's like all the way the last couple of years, you just, the bullshit really starts to kind of drain out, and you go and you're like, now I kind of get to sort of start over in a lot of ways, or you say that to yourself, or so it's interesting what you're saying, because I one of the things I said to myself, I was like, you know, I basically have limited now. I maybe open Instagram like once, twice a week at this point, and I'm like that close from pretty much, but I don't want, you know, there's a couple, you know, relationships there with certain kind of charities and things that I've like nurtured over the years that I would not want to sort of give up on, but it's a lot on what you're saying. I don't even know what that application does for me anymore. Like I mean, you know, it might, I think it brings attention. I think the point was, you know, bringing attention to certain voices in certain kind of, whether it's charities or certain kind of purposes that don't get the same attention. And for that, I'll stay on. Like I'll try and figure out a way to kind of like, partner there and keep making it for that. But outside of that, like, you're right. Like I don't have TikTok, but I open the thing and I don't even recognize like what I'm seeing. I made a distinct choice to follow.
So odd.
It's like I constantly go like, where's the good and the bad, and how much does it weigh the other? And again, the only thing that still keeps me in that game, so to speak, is wanting to find a way to like kind of connect with somebody that really is trying to say something, because there's so much noise and there's so much bravado without any initiative, and everyone loves to just be a backseat driver and tell you like their thoughts, but they're like not doing anything to change anything. It's just
so true. Yeah,
it's the easiest, and that's the only fear I have is like where it comes to like sort of like the teenage mind. It's just people have to be really careful. I just read somewhere that there was these lawsuits, like because there's the suicide rate and there's all these things like parents are afraid of, and I'm not surprised, because I don't think these companies are really factoring any of that in.
No, I mean, we
they
know
don't
they're
care
not.
about you.
We know that they're not.
We know they're not.
We know that their profit is their motive. Like that's not even, that's an objective truth that we have to just contend with.
No, you're right about Instagram. I think that's a gripe that a lot of people have, is like they follow specific people and they're not being shown those people. And so what's the point? I 100% agree with you. I think that's actually a really big problem that has been talked about a lot to the creators of Instagram, or the heads of Instagram, and they just don't want to hear it because they want to sell you stuff.
My last beef with TikTok is this. I was like, a friend of ours, Will Malnati, and I, we were doing videos. We were doing videos 2 years ago or whatever, before TikTok, that were called 1 Minute Man. And anyway, we never got any credit for that.
I'm glad we're gonna start a campaign to bring it back, Sebastian. Sebastian is the OG TikToker. I do wanna just like, the one thing that I do think is positive about TikTok, about social media, is that it does feel like people who have stories to tell, people who have talent, actual creative talent, whether it's like visual art, whether it's storytelling through videos, whether it's, I don't know, mixed media. I do feel like now there is opportunity for them to share those stories with a wider audience, which I think is really special. I think the amount of roadblocks that there have been in the past to get into like the industry, to be able to work with a production company, to be able to share those stories I think that's one thing that's positive to me, is that more and more people, everyday people, get to share stories, and I love listening to those stories. And
by the way, I agree with you. I mean, I don't know, because you were in LA, right, Penn? But like, for example, in those years when like we were starting out, like I was in New York and I was have to send tapes. And I talked to a few people today about it, like who are actors like coming up. And I was like, oh my God, like if only we had a YouTube or something where you could just like you could film something and put it on there and it would get seen that same way. Yeah. It was a hassle. It was insane to send a tape to get noticed that way. So listen, I totally agree with you. Like, that's the good of that. And I'm all for like harnessing that, but it's like, it seems like we're in a world where we love to just crank up like the negative ways to use that.
Well,
that's
capitalism. I mean, that's because what you're talking about, like what Sophie's highlighting and what you're highlighting, is like, this is just the innate capacity of human beings using technology to bring more and more instantaneous forms of communication across great distances. There's nothing but positive implications there. It's that it's happening within the framework of capitalism, which literally places profit above any other. It's the only priority, and it's not that even any one individual has to have that motive. It's that that's the system within which we work, and therefore, I'm not saying that good people can do work and it's all for nothing, but it's, the framing and the system really does need to change. And of course, that's what people all over the world are talking about, and communities all over the world are figuring out. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing about social media is that it's a little bit like the tough thing about it is that these giant platforms, they're now just so they're fully within the claws of capitalism, and it's sort of like this profit-driven death spiral. So these platforms, which even just 5 years ago, but especially like 10 years ago, there was so much more, I don't know, like variation and diversity of like expression. I feel like now, the irony is that memes are almost like the freest form of communication on social media. It's like, even though there's something universal about that brand of humor, memes are like, I feel like memes are humans always finding ways to retain their humanity within like a sort of mental prison. I think it's maybe it's a bit of a hot take, but I'll go ahead and say it.
Well, I think I know what you mean.
I was just thinking about...
I think I know what I mean as well.
I definitely don't. So Sebastian, maybe you can break it down.
We can spend more time on this just after.
No, let's move on. It's reminding me of last night. We have a house guest right now, and she grew up in Australia, or she grew up in Iran, and then moved to Australia when she was like a preteen as a refugee. And she was telling me that she watched this one movie over and over again because it's about this Italian girl who moved to Australia, and that was the closest thing for her. Like it's a completely different experience, but it was the closest thing for her to her own experience. It was the first piece of media she had seen where there was a girl who was not from Australia, trying to navigate being in Australia, and I was just thinking like how sad that that's the only piece of media that you had, and still how much of an impact it had on her. And how today, I do think there are more and more stories for young people that reflect their own niche experiences. Like there is a Muslim girl wearing a hijab on TikTok who's hilarious, telling her story. There's many of them telling their stories. And there are many more opportunities for people to connect with those stories, no matter how niche their experience is. They don't have to be white. They don't have to be straight. They don't have to be whatever, list all the, the majority groups. But yeah, I think that's something that is really special that we can't miss out on,
I think also, not that I need to have the final word, but probably we should move on. But I do just want to say one thing. I think like the way that people use it, like part of the ways that people use it can be really positive. The challenge is that the platforms are based on an addiction model. I mean, that's like studied, proven. But I think I've probably even mentioned this on a previous episode, but I think maybe it got edited out, so I can say it again. There was like a week where...
we'll edit it out again, don't worry.
Yeah. We'll just keep cutting this tidbit. There was like a week where Instagram, which is owned by Meta, Facebook, had like received the results of a long longitudinal study of the impacts of the platform on young people. And it was basically, I don't remember the exact details, so we'll have to fact check this, but it was like if young people spent more than an hour or 2 hours a day, it had very real consequences on their mental health. It was proven that it was damaging. And that same week, Instagram had an internal mandate to try to keep young people on the platform for like 3 hours a day. And so like they knew that would cause mental health issues, and they were like losing young people to TikTok. So they had an internal mandate to like, how do we keep them on longer? So to me, that's evil. That's just like plain evil. Like you have the information and you're doing something really evil with it because you need money, and so it's an addiction model. It's a profit model.
Need money. Want.
You want money.
Want money.
Yeah.
So there are wonderful things happening on the platform, and the creators of the platform are making you addicted.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you put that in.
I think as long as we're aware, it's like that's all. I think we just have to keep being aware of all the pros and cons, and kind of like be able to make decisions from that. Like maybe that's, especially like you're talking about these teenage years, like they're so incredible in a way, and I actually feel like when you're a teenager you don't get to enjoy them, right? Because you're too stressed trying to kind of
that's true.
Take in, you're getting narratives, you're seeing stories, someone's saying this is cool, this is that, and it's like this wonderful time deep down where you get to really find out about yourself and what you want, what you like. And I guess that's the end of the goal is hopefully these kids can learn to keep doing that without and still just like kind of stay cautious. Like if you feel like an instinct is not completely landing, like it's okay. Like you don't have to always agree with everything. It's just it's so anyway. But we didn't
Sebastian,
have this growing up, Penn.
No, I mean, well, wait. What do you mean we didn't have this? Have what? Have which aspect?
We didn't grow up with social media. We didn't have.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I really, my stepson is 13, and I'm very conscious of it, and it's interesting being a parent of someone that age, because I think that inherent sweetness that you were talking about a second ago, and we've kind of been touching on, there is this beautiful plasticity to, just chemically, there's a plasticity to the brain, and then I just think, like, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, there's a plasticity and a resilience that somehow also characterizes this period where it can be so tough, but you almost like don't have anything else to compare it to. So you're just kind of like, you're in the trenches of it, you're in the weeds of it, the aspects of it that are hard, and you kind of just like get by better than maybe adults would be faring with that level of, I don't know, like volatility. I see kids that age as being quite brave. And as you said before, by the way, the background here on Nava and Sophie. Sophie used to be a 5th grade teacher. Nava used to be a middle school director, and then also worked at the UN researching the effects of media on youth as one aspect of her work. So that's part of why they're here. So that I'm not just rambling about a bunch of nonsense. But this time, it's like there is kind of a target on their chests and their minds, and I say that because it's like it's you were saying before, if anybody this age is listening to this, it's a time that requires courage, and just being is courageous. Being, wow, I'm going to say something like being yourself is courageous, but it actually, I mean, it is. It is. And social media is such a further invitation to conform to some other sense. I mean, we were talking a second ago about what it feels like to be, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 30 years old in an audition. I feel like you're taken right back there. You're taken right back to feeling like, oh, I'm not enough. I need to be more like that dude. It's like living inside a social media room.
To go back to what was said earlier, let me tell you, if I booked more jobs off of tapes than I did in the room.
Did you really?
So if I'd had YouTube,
there you go. Maybe
so there
your
you go.
career would have taken
If
off.
you had YouTube, maybe you would be like starring in Marvel franchises.
Maybe you would
and
be
being
like
nominated for
Sebastian
Emmys,
Stan.
and you'd be like starring alongside Julianne Moore in one thing, and you really would have a career, man.